Let's start, shall we, with the highly anticipated summit between the leaders of South Korea and China. President Park Geun-hye and her Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping held their one-on-one talks this morning in Hangzhou, the host city for the ongoing G20 Summit. The outcome of their discussions on THAAD and its upcoming arrival in South Korea is what many had been waiting for. We are going to connect to our correspondent Song Ji-sun, who is travelling with President Park. Ji-sun, the meeting is over. What do we know so far?
Good afternoon, Mark. The two leaders sat down for 46 minutes this morning, exceeding their pre-arranged 30-minute time slot by more than quarter of an hour. The talks got off to an amicable start, with Presidents Park and Xi talking about Korea's independence movement, which blossomed in the region in the 1930s. Citing a number of challenges on the economic and security fronts facing the two countries and the world, President Park said they cannot be tackled by one country on its own, but that collaboration must take place across borders. She also expressed South Korea's strong desire to strengthen bilateral relations through communication, highlighting North Korea's nuclear and missile threats, which have been a stumbling block to Seoul Beijing relations. President Park is likely to have asked China to do more to press its close ally North Korea and for its understanding in regards to Seoul and Washington's decision to deploy the U.S. missile defense system THAAD in South Korea. Now, Seoul and Washington say THAAD will help protect the South from Pyongyang's growing nuclear and missile threats, but China has been highly vocal in its opposition, citing its own security concerns. Noting the rising uncertainties on the Korean peninsula and throughout the region, President Xi said South Korea-China relations should develop on the right path in a stable and sound manner, while stressing the need to appreciate their common interests and political cooperation. China has on numerous occasions called for a nuclear-free Korean peninsula, but President Xi reiterated Beijing's anger over THAAD during his talks on Saturday with U.S. President Barack Obama and again at this morning's talks with President Park, according to Chinese state-run news agency Xinhua. President Xi reportedly said that mishandling the issue is not conducive to strategic stability in the region and could intensify disputes. We will have more details once President Park's diplomatic secretary holds a press conference shortly. Mark?
And, well, we do look forward to hearing what the Secretary has to say on the talks and their discussions on THAAD in particular. It's such a thorny issue, of course. These talks are taking place on the sidelines of the G20 Summit. What's left on the agenda there? More sessions on the global economy?
Right now, taking you back to the main event, all the leaders are now back at the G20 Summit, and the second session is now underway on the second and final day. And President Park is set to speak at sessions 3 and 5. She is going to urge global leaders for action for open and free trade to tackle growing international protectionism. Following a reception, a working lunch, and the closing ceremony, the G20 will adopt the Hangzhou commmunique aimed at building an innovative, invigorated, interconnected, and inclusive world economy. I'll be back with the latest in our later newscast. Back to you in Seoul.
Well, thank you very much, Ji-sun, for your comprehensive report there. That was our Presidential Office correspondent, Song Ji-sun, reporting live from the host city of the G20 Summit in Hangzhou.